The nausea and vomiting of pregnancy, I've had doctors who regard this as a specific and regard hypnosis as absolutely dependable. Here's one man who says, wonderful, 3 times. I've had a doctor who says, I've used it over 100 times. I have yet to see it fail. I've had other doctors who tell me that they've failed with it. We had a case occur at the Margaret Haig Memorial Hospital in Jersey City, which was a remarkable case because of the fact that this woman was vomiting to such excess. It was that medical term where they thought she was going to die because she'd been vomiting so much. What do you call that thing? What is it? Hyperemesis. Yeah, hyperemesis, whatever it is. And they thought she was going to die, and there had been a consultation of 6 OBGYN men on the case, and 5 of the men said that they felt that she'd have to abort, but the only way to save her life was to abort. And the 6th man said that, no, I will never agree to that until hypnosis has been tried. The 6th man happened to be a student of ours. In fact, I think this was one of the early cases which started the success of this course. And the other 5 men didn't know anything about hypnosis, so they said, well, we don't know anything about it. You do it. So he went in there, hypnotized her, gave her suggestions that the vomiting would stop, and the entire course of her pregnancy would be normal from that point on, with the result that the aborting was entirely unnecessary. And later, she delivered herself of an 8.5-pound baby boy in perfect health. And this was such a startling thing for the doctors in Jersey, because remember, this was around 1952, when the use of hypnosis on a scientific level was just becoming a little bit popular in that area. And it brought us a lot of students when they heard about this case, because everybody felt that a life had been saved. And when doctors went around saying that you can actually save a life with hypnosis in certain cases, it brought us quite a number of students at that time. But this case I do remember. However, there are times when it will not work. When it will not work, hypnoanalysis is indicated, for I look upon the nausea and vomiting of pregnancy just as the psychiatrist does, as a sign of pregnancy rejection. When you hear the words pregnancy rejection, it's so odd to think how many doctors misunderstand those words. The psychiatrist does not mean by the fact that he uses the term pregnancy rejection that your wife didn't want a baby simply because she manifested certain signs of biliousness and nausea and vomiting and so on at the time that she was pregnant. What it really means is just this, that a woman is just like a man in this respect, that she expects to live a certain way. She has certain things planned. She wakes up one morning, she finds out she's pregnant. All the plans are just shot, kerplunk. They all vanish. And she may have been planning a vacation in July, and she may have been planning on going with her husband here, and now everything has changed. The entire routine of her life has changed. It takes a little while for her to adapt to the idea of pregnancy. Therefore, until she adapts, until she accepts the pregnancy, she has these signs of pregnancy rejection. She has the nausea, she has the vomiting, and everything else. Doesn't mean she doesn't want the baby. She may want the baby just as much as you wanted the baby. I hate to think that because Pauline was a little nauseous or a little vomity at the time that she was pregnant, that she didn't want our children. It was merely until she got used to the idea of having a baby. Then those nausea and vomiting signs disappear, and you find that she has bounding good health during the entire period of pregnancy. This is the usual history of a pregnancy. Wonderful health after that little short period of the pregnancy rejection is over. But sometimes there's a violent reason for the pregnancy rejection. The wrong rooster, for example. The wrong rooster can cause the most violent signs of pregnancy rejection. A quarrel with a husband. The fact that there's a divorce pending. We were conditioning 26 women, and 25 out of the 26 go into the coma. The 26th one doesn't go into the coma. and we found out that the husband had said to the wife, he says, if you allow yourself to be hypnotized tonight, I'll divorce you. And she was the woman who was perspiring, everything. She wanted it so badly. But the fear that he might keep his word and actually divorce her kept her from entering the coma state at all. Now, those things can happen with your nausea and vomiting of pregnancy. The same thing can happen. Let that woman feel that a divorce is imminent, and let her find out now that she's pregnant. And brother, she'll show signs of pregnancy rejection at a terrific level. Then is when hypnoanalysis is indicated, if you want to get rid of those signs completely. And you can get rid of them. So think of it that way, and make sure when you see this violent nausea and vomiting that does not respond to superficial suggestion, make sure that you've tried your hypnoanalysis, because hypnoanalysis is wonderful in those cases. Dyspareunia. Dyspareunia usually does not yield to superficial suggestions given in deep somnambulism. We have found that much better results are obtained by using hypnoanalysis to determine the cause of the condition. Then when the cause is determined and exposed to the patient at a conscious level, the condition will yield to suggestions given in deep somnambulism. I doubt if there's a doctor here who hasn't had one or more cases of dyspareunia to handle in his medical career. And you know that they're tough to handle, because if a woman has pain at such a time, what has the doctor to offer her? There's nothing organic that causes the condition, yet the woman definitely suffers pain, and some of them suffer excruciating pain at such a time. How many doctors here have had dyspareunia cases? Will you raise your hands, please? Quite a number of them. Well, when you get that dyspareunia case, hypnoanalysis is your only answer. You can put a woman into somnambulism, give her suggestions that she won't have pain at such a time, and if you come back next week and she says, doctor, you didn't help me at all, and I still have the same pain. And sometimes that pain is so excruciating that it can actually make a woman faint. It can make a woman do all sorts of horrible things. I think murders have been committed on account of dyspareunia. I actually believe that. I actually think that the woman who says to her husband, you're killing me, and who says, if you think you're going to kill me, I'll kill you, and then goes ahead and kills him, she's doing it on an emotional basis, God knows. But she thinks her reasons are plenty valid. The man has been killing her in her own mind. Do hypnoanalysis on it, and you'll discover the cause of the dyspareunia so easily that it will surprise you how quickly in hypnoanalysis that cause is revealed. Sometimes it goes back to something that happened in childhood. Sometimes it goes back to something that happened in marriage. I'll give you a case history. The doctor had called me and said, Dave, these people are friends of the family, and I am positive I couldn't do anything on it. She wouldn't talk to me like she'd talk to a stranger. She knows me too well. But she says, this couple are so beautifully married. Would you please take over the hypnoanalysis? They're going to get a divorce, and I feel sure that marriage can be saved, and I know it's a sexual problem. Would you go into it for me? So when I said I would take over for him, here's what happened. I find out that the husband loves the wife devotedly. And I find out that the woman is saying he's killing me. He hurts me so much that I just can't stand him. I've got to have a divorce. I put her into hypnoanalysis. But where do you think I found the trouble? The trouble had occurred on their wedding night, when he held her off at arm's length. She was completely nude at the time. Held her off at arm's length, and he says, now you're mine, all mine. That's what he said to her, just a statement of love like that. But she had the feeling that she was a slave, and that now he'd bought her hook, line, and sinker because he'd paid $2 for a license and got married. And she had the idea that she was a slave. And from that moment on, the pain began. She couldn't be a slave to any man. There's where the pain developed. You wouldn't think a thing like that could cause pain. But in her own mind, she wasn't going to be a slave to any man. Now, to let you see how far that remark took her, I found out that when she used another rooster, she didn't have dyspareunia. She had no dyspareunia when she was with another man, but when she was with her husband, she had dyspareunia. Afterwards, I called the doctor. I said, I want no part of this case. I don't want to handle it at all. Not because of the way, I'm not a moralist, but here was this man so madly in love with her, and here was this girl. Her subconscious reason for playing around was the fact that he had made the statement, now you're mine, all mine, and she was trying to prove to him that she wasn't his, all his. But this was one of those things that was for a psychiatrist, not for Dave Ellman, not for hypnosis. And I told the doctor that and washed my hands of the case, but there's where the dyspareunia started, was right in that remark. It hit her pretty deep. Problem of masturbation. Masturbation has never been proved to be harmful. We do know, however, from many neurotic cases encountered that the guilt complex engendered by masturbation can be at the root of many neurotic disturbances. It's a good idea to investigate the masturbation angle when attempting to solve a sexual problem in which other neurotic symptoms are present, and it can be done easily in hypnoanalysis. Now, gentlemen, I am not trying to tell you that masturbation is harmful. Far from it. I am convinced that if masturbation was harmful, most of us would be dead. But, and that's not said in kidding. That is said in absolute sincerity. I believe that this is one of nature's ways of letting us get rid of excess energy and so on. But we have been brought up to believe certain things. And when you run up against a case where a grandfather has said to a child, you stop that or one of these days you'll wind up in the nut house, that's what causes people to be crazy. And then the kid is unable to stop. And all his lifetime he has the idea he's going to be crazy or made crazy from the masturbation. And sooner or later, this will take the form of many neurotic disturbances. When I find more than one neurotic disturbance present in a sexual problem, I always investigate the masturbation angle, whether it's male or female, because females are, I think, more guilty of masturbation than males are. I know this is an odd thing to say, but my research has showed me that the average woman, the average girl, is far more apt to have the habit than the average boy. Maybe that's just because I've been working with a certain type of case. I don't know. But at least I get that feeling from having worked with so many of them, and I think the neurotic angle goes deeper with women than it does with men. Maybe they're more sensitive and they get more of a guilt complex than the man does. I don't know. But anyhow, when you've got a masturbation problem, it's usually manifested by several neurotic symptoms. Talk to them about the masturbation in deep hypnosis. Parade before them books showing the non-harmfulness of masturbation. And you'd be surprised how those neurotic symptoms will vanish like that. I'll give you one case history that will show you what I mean. The doctors have been working with a boy who had a host of neurotic symptoms. They had managed to get rid of all his neurotic symptoms except just a few of them. One, dizziness. Such dizziness and blurred vision that if he was driving his car, all of a sudden this dizziness and blurred vision would occur, and he'd have to, as best he could, get the car off to the side of the road and stay there for about 30 or 40 minutes while he waited for his vision to clear up and for the dizziness to end. The next thing that happened was that he hadn't been able to hold a job in about 4 years. He had a wife and baby to support. Now remember, all other neurotic ailments had been practically eliminated from this boy, but the fact that he couldn't hold a job meant he couldn't support his wife and kids, and the fact that he had blurred vision and so on just tended to show that he couldn't even drive a car to go to work. Now, we brought up the question of masturbation with him, and he had what you might call the most amazing reaction. He went into practically a spell. I thought you were going to ask me that. I knew all the time that someday you'd ask me that, and I've dreaded that question, and I know that I'm going to go crazy from it, but I can't help it. And then the whole thing came tumbling out. It seems that a grandfather of his had caught him masturbating when he was about 11 years old and said, if you don't stop that, you'll wind up in the nut house. And he says, I couldn't stop, and that's where I'm going to wind up, and I know it. And then he went all to pieces. We paraded before him these books showing the non-harmfulness of masturbation and all that sort of thing. The following Monday, he was able to get a job, hold on to it. He was able to drive a car to work without any blurred vision or anything else. 6 months later, he started to work with this relative of his in a bakery in New Jersey. And together, those two people, within a few years, owned a chain of bakeries, a success story made possible by the fact that we discussed the subject of masturbation with him. And remember that he hadn't been able to work in 4 years. This is perhaps an isolated example, but it really isn't. I can tell you many, many more sexual problems in which that played an awfully important part. I've talked to you about a lot of problems in sexual matters which can be solved with the use of hypnosis, but I haven't discussed just two things more. One, the problem of timing, both male and female. Much marital discord is caused by conflict of sexual timing. Premature ejaculation usually responds beautifully to superficial suggestion given in deep somnambulism. And I generally strive to give the male a 10-minute timing because that seems to satisfy his ego and seems to satisfy the wife. You'll find that they'll hold on to this timing. And if you talk to them 5 years later, you'll find that the husband says, oh, I've held on to that timing you gave me, Mr. Elmer. I've never deviated from it. And you talk to his wife, and she'll agree with him that he's never deviated from it, and it's settled their marriage and made it much more happy. Premature ejaculation is one thing that can be helped considerably. The speed of the woman, the timing of the woman can be speeded up, oh, so easily by superficial suggestion given in deep somnambulism. We were talking a while ago about impotence. I'd like to talk to you for just a few moments about potency. You know, it is one of my theories, and I think it's echoed by a lot of people, that impotence expresses the will to die, and potency expresses the will to live. You can be potent so long as you think potent. I had in one of my classes a woman, and when I made the statement that you can be potent so long as you think you are potent, made the statement, Mr. Ellman, how right you are. She said, I wonder how many doctors in this class have examined the sperm of a man 90 years of age. He says, I have, and I found it exceedingly alive. This idea that a man's manhood has to vanish, and at the age of 45 or 50, he has to get to the point where he thinks that sex is no longer for him. When he does that, he is just developing and helping to develop the will to die. Once impotence occurs, death is not far behind, is my feeling. And I can remember talking to a man who is a most wonderful thinker. In fact, this man in his 90s is still a threat to every woman on the block. So much of a threat that when I first met him in 1937, remember he was in his, must have been in his 70s then, or early 80s, I don't know, 70s I guess at least, 70s or early 80s, we had a secretary who came to us and said, Mr. Elman, what do you think? And I said, what? She said, Jack wants to take me to dinner. She said, you know something? I said, what? I think he's trying to make me. So we laughed, and we said, well, are you going to dinner with him? She said, you know, I don't trust that guy. I believe he could. Now, there she was speaking about the man in the 70s. If you saw this man, you would believe that here was a man probably in his late 50s or early 60s. You'd never believe, but he was in his 90s. And so one day, I used to take him around to all my classes. At the 10th session, I used to bring him around to show what autosuggestion can do for a man, because he has autosuggestion developed more than any other man that I have ever met. And, for instance, he can stop his pulse on command, and he doesn't do it by trickery. He just extends his arms like that and commands his pulse to stop. At one time, he used to have power to make his heart slow down and stop beating. But he once scared himself to death by blacking out when he did it, so he's never done it since then, and you can't get him to do it anymore. But I know that he used to do this. I don't believe he could have ever killed himself by so doing, because his will to live is so strong that I know his heart would start beating again. But it did scare him to death, and that's the reason that he's never tried it since then. He can say to that hand, come on, blood, all the blood from that hand, come on out. And he'll withdraw the blood from that arm, all by autosuggestion. He's got it developed to such a fine point that I used to love to bring him to class just to let doctors see what you can do with autosuggestion if you carry it to an nth degree. So one day, we're driving to Philadelphia or Baltimore or someplace together. I think it was Baltimore, because it seems to me that this conversation occurred outside of Philadelphia on the way to Baltimore. And we're driving along, and I said, Jack, you know something that, and I told him, related the episode about my secretary having said to him maybe 15, 16, 17 years before about that he was trying to make her, and so on. And I said, no, everybody looks at you and sees a man of 55 or 60 instead of a man now in his 90s. At that time, I think he was 91 years old at the time that this conversation took place. So I said to him, Jack, how do you keep yourself so young? He said, well, Dave, I don't know if this will give you the whole answer. But he says, you know, I have a lot of your thinking. He said, I think you know that. I said, yeah. But he says, I'll tell you what happened to me when I was about 50 years of age. When I was about 50 years of age, I started to slow down. I started to find that when I saw a woman on the street, no matter how good looking she was, she didn't appeal to me. She didn't give me that urge that she used to give me when I was 20, 30, 40. And I said to myself, now, wait a minute. Wait a minute. If I'm no longer interested in women, I must be getting old, and I don't want to get old. I want to stay young. So, Dave, you know what I used to do? He says, at night, when I went to bed, before I would allow myself to fall asleep, I would conjure up in my mind the face and figure of the most luscious, gorgeous, most beautiful woman in the world that I could imagine. And when I had visible evidence that I was very much a man, then I would say to myself, well, Jack, tonight you are a man. And that night I would sleep, knowing full well that I was fully potent. And Dave, I kept that up every night, and I've kept that up all my life. I'm now in my 90s. Do you know any man in the world who in his 90s can conjure up a fantasy in his mind and immediately prove that he is very much a man? I challenge you to do it. I challenge any man to do it. But he says, I can do it. He says, you see, Dave, I think with you that potency keeps you young. Impotence makes you old sooner than you have to be. Think potent, act potent, and you will be potent. And so I can't give any one of you better advice than what he gave me. He said to me, Dave, keep yourself young, think young, hold on to your potency, and you'll find that so long as you are physically healthy, you're very much a man, and you don't have to worry about ever losing that potency. You can be potent till the day you die. I am firmly convinced that the man is right, and while I don't say, go thou and do likewise, I still don't think that he has done anything which isn't entirely creditable for you. If you saw this man and saw his youth looking like 60 when he's now probably about 95 or 96 years of age, I can only say, take his advice. Think potently, and you'll hold on to your potency a great deal longer. All right, that concludes our sex lecture. If there's any questions on that, let's have them, because on the question of anything that I've talked about, I'm quite willing to give you the answers if I know it, and if I don't know the answers, I'll do just like I have done on several occasions today and say I can't give you the answer, that's medical, and I don't know the medical answer.
Back to the vomiting and pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
I've had 2 absolute flats this year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same old story. It was a need of vomiting and pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting cases when they regressed.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was a young lady. She made a pretty good salary. She really married the man.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't ready to get married because he wanted to study to be a doctor.
Uh-huh.
And she forced the issue that she would put him through school. It wouldn't make any difference. She was making a good salary. All right, they got married. 3 months, she was pregnant, and he was sick. He stopped his medical education, but she had to prove to him that it was a big proposition for her to produce a baby for him. And that was her need of vomiting, and she didn't want it stopped. And I had another one that didn't want it stopped because her husband came home with a terrible cigarette breath and a beer breath now that she's pregnant and couldn't play around. So now his breath was terrible, and she was going to show him what the trouble that she was going through to take care of his baby. Both of them took hypnosis wonderfully. They delivered their babies. Hypnosis, although the one that was the head of the family developed terrific nephritis after the baby was born, which still prevented her from getting him through medical school. That was those 2. Dyspareunia, I've seen about 4 or 5 of those. That was due to one thing, all the same. Afraid of getting pregnant. And it went on for years.
Doctor, that fear of pregnancy, which occasionally you'll find in dyspareunia, is not serious. I mean, that's not, no, when I say it is not serious, I mean, it gives them pain, so I'm not minimizing the fact that they have dyspareunia. But I mean, it is not something that they have to hold on to. You can satisfy them that there are many, many ways, except, of course, if you're interfering with the church, then you can't. Where it happens to a Catholic girl who's been brought up to believe that she has to have babies every time no contraceptives are indicated, there isn't much you can do to help there by techniques that I know. But where it happens outside of the Catholic Church, that's the easiest kind of a case to solve. When it happens in the Catholic Church, that is, when they're within the church and this happens, here's the technique that I have used, doctor, and I've saved a couple of marriages by it. And I mean saved it. The doctors actually credit me with having saved the marriage by the attitude that I took. When I discovered that this was the cause of the dyspareunia, I said to the woman, now look, you're Catholic and I'm Jewish, and we hold completely different views on certain things. But there's one man for whom you and I both have tremendous respect, and that's your priest. I want you to go to your priest, and I want you to talk to him just as confidentially as you've talked to me. He's certainly worthy of that faith and trust. Now, he has been trained to handle cases like this. I want you to know that you can place your problem in his hands completely and know that he can handle it through to a conclusion and solve this entire thing for you without destroying your marriage, without destroying the love that you have for your husband or that your husband has for you, and also by completely eliminating the dyspareunia. And doctor, you send them to the priest, and I don't know what that magnificently educated man has to offer them, But somehow, in every case where I have done that, the doctor has said to me, Dave, that was a stroke of genius, sending him to the priest. It saved the marriage. They no longer have the dyspareunia.